And hey, everybody, welcome to Marriage
Monday.
Marriage Monday. I almost forgot where
Thanks
we
for
were.
joining us.
It is great to see you. Thanks for joining us here on our big YouTube channel. It's great to have you here with us and anyone else who gets to hear this as well. It's nice to see you. We've been talking the last few weeks about marriages, about our marriage a little bit, about your marriage, and the things that we can learn about marriage. And do you remember some of the things that we talked about in the last few weeks?
Well, we've been specifically talking about our intimacy and having a lot of fun talking about our sexual intimacy and how we can grow closer together as couples and really enjoy what God intended for us when He gave us the gift of our sexual intimacy.
Yeah, it's been really great. We've talked about a number of things, the importance of our connection together. We've also talked about about yada.
Yes.
Or yada.
Yada. I don't say it correctly, but yada.
That's right, which is the importance, and our first class together, our first session, together, was that sex is an essential part of our relationship, an essential service, of course, and then yada talks about about our sexual relation one with another. So that's been really, really great. Last week, we looked at foods that they say.
Yes, our aphrodisiacs.
That's what they say. So while you sat at home feeling sorry for yourselves, we sat here and we ate lots of great food, and that was really good, lots of fun.
Well, we taught you some things like how to shuck an oyster. That was really cool. You got to bring your knife on the set.
That's right. Maybe we should hear from anybody if anybody cut their hand open.
Oh, did anyone try oysters this week?
Yeah, did you have oysters? We'll take a look.
Let us know.
Yeah, but we'll see if that happens. So here's what we're going to do. We usually start off, and we want to let everybody get a chance to join us, and we want to have a little bit of time where we enjoy ourselves, maybe laugh just a little bit, or do something together, play a game, something like that. We've been known to do that, so we're going to do that tonight. We encourage you to try this at home if you can. It's going to take maybe a couple pieces of paper and a pen or a marker or something like that. And you may have seen this going around on Facebook. I don't know if you have or not, but here's what we're going to do.
Oh, also, Kevin, we were going to ask everyone if they wanted to put in the chat. Well,
yes.
Please,
go ahead.
I think a lot of people have been finding new creative things to do together, which is wonderful, part of connection. And so if you have any enjoyable activities that you and your spouse have been enjoying while you've been social distancing at home all the time, write it in the chat. Maybe we can get some ideas for each other, cards. For us, it would be walks.
Walks, yeah.
Lots of walks.
So we want to hear any activities that you guys have been doing that you maybe haven't normally done, or you've just picked up and you've started doing as well.
Could be games, board games.
Anything goes, I guess. But maybe keep it PG if you're
going
to do a comment like that. But so here's the activity that we're going to do here. You guys can either watch us or try and play along at home. What Lisa's going to do is she is going to draw something on my back, but not actually on the clothes I'm wearing. She's going to hold the paper onto my back, and she's going to draw something. You should be able to see that from one of the camera angles. And I, of course, not knowing what she's drawing, I'm going to interpret, or I'm going to draw what I feel that she is drawing. Does that make sense? You're going to draw on my back. I'm going to draw what I feel you are drawing, and we're going to see if I can, and if our marriage is good, if our marriage is right, if our marriage is strong, I should be able to draw identically what she draws. Of course, we haven't worked on this. I don't know what she's going to draw, so I'm going to do this. Let me get my cap off here. Okay. All right, and I'm going to hold up my paper, and let's just check with our tech guy. Is everything okay? All right, good. And now, Lisa, don't make sure.
I know.
You tell me when you're drawing, so at least I feel something.
Oh, sorry.
Have you started?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
I love having my back tickled. I wish I was getting you to draw on my back, but anyway.
Okay. Are you going?
Okay.
So just do it one sort of stroke at a time.
I can interpret. I'm going to start now.
All right.
You ready?
Yes, I'm ready. What in the world? Okay. All right. All right, that's it. That's perfectly it.
Okay.
We're writing hieroglyphics.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Okay. Oh, I think I know what this is. I really was talking and missed what you just did right there. I think.
And if people are just joining us right now, should we be telling them what we're doing so they could, anyway?
I'm concentrating.
Okay.
I'm concentrating.
All right, so I'm drawing on your back, and you have to draw what I'm drawing.
What in the world did you just do? That's I think I got it.
Okay. All right, I'm done.
So you drew an alien with a hat. Yes?
Well, let's see if you, what do you think I drew? It's a rose.
It's okay. Mine is, so I think I kind of like the, this is
You
what
almost
I thought.
got the leaves, yeah.
I thought you were doing, no. I thought you were doing, I thought this is an alien. You see his little
very
face
clever. Yes,
with his little smile right
yeah,
there?
Yeah.
Not at all.
Why don't you see if someone wrote something
Okay,
more
right.
interesting?
So
okay,
there
that
you
was
go.
a game that you can play at home.
Yeah.
And
Let's
you
see.
could take turns.
What activities are people doing? We'll see here. Movies.
Yes.
We hear you.
Okay.
Everybody's doing that. Walking and gardening. That's Cherry. She's always doing something.
Do
so
they? But do you
productive.
garden together?
Winston walks away while Jerry gardens. That's probably what's happening. Evan Ding, we went for a run 3 weeks ago. It didn't really stick. That's my son-in-law. Hiking, Cheryl's been hiking. Walks, garden, board games, that's the Taylors. Okay, long drives. Albert's going on long drives.
Oh, very nice.
No indication whether he's driving with
your
his
wife,
or
though?
not. Just,
Yeah.
That's it, I'm going on a long drive. Maybe we need to go back a couple weeks for sessions for them. Scott, exactly long walks, reading marriage books. Keener.
Wow.
He's a keener.
Wow.
Very
Together
good.
though? Are they doing?
Daryl's playing cards. William Tarbett is running. All right. Hopefully not away, but running to your wife.
I know
right?
our good friends Ed and Diana play Skippo every night before they go to
Is that
bed.
what they
Yeah,
do?
yeah.
Really? Is it
Yeah,
Skippo?
it is Skippo.
I don't think that's right.
It is. It changed, I guess.
Well, we'll see
Used
if
to
they'll
be-
weigh in if
I
it's
think
really
it used to be
Skippo.
something else, but it's Skippo now.
Okay, right. All right. So, people who are not together, they're online video games and
Okay.
Netflix parties and
That's
things
great.
like that. So that's good. And okay, great. All right, Lisa
Yes.
Escalona.
Oh,
This is our good friends Lisa and Stu. Lisa says, I bake, Stu eats.
that's awesome.
Very good. All right, so again, welcome everybody. This is Marriage Monday, and as we said, we've been talking for the last few weeks about marriages, actually a number of weeks now, hasn't it been quite a,
Yes. Yeah.
however long it's been, what is this,
I think
8,
this is
9?
10.
10? So we've been around here for a while, but the goal with everything that we do is we're trying to help each other's marriages. And so we kind of are just taking from our marriage. We're not necessarily professionals, but we've been doing this for a while, just like a lot of you guys have. And we learned some things along the way, don't we, all of us? And we share that with each other. And then we're hopefully, and in the first 4 weeks, we really talked especially about how communication and the way we treat each other in our marriage is so very important. And then the last 4 weeks, we pivoted and started talking about our sexual relationship with each other and how that important that is, even though it makes us giggle and turn different colors. and ooh, but it's super
Yes.
important to
Yeah.
the health of
Yeah.
any marriage,
Kind of
and
the
every marriage.
the glue to the marriage. Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to take a turn again, and we're going to leave those 2 sections that we've done already, and we're going to start talking about something very important, and that is in every marriage, there is a legacy. So we're going to be talking about marriage legacy
love this.
for the next
Good.
2 weeks. So we're going to do 3
3 in total.
in total. We're going to talk about legacy. Now, Lisa, let's define what legacy means so everybody knows, because there's kind of 2 ways that you can talk about legacy, right? In this world that we live in, everybody, when they say legacy, if you're watching shows with, really rich people, when they say legacy, what they're talking about is the money that they're going to leave, or the corporations they're going to leave. So you may be having lots of money yourself. If you do, good for you, and you're going to leave that to somebody someday, maybe kids, maybe friends, maybe somebody else. But that's not really what we're talking about. In the legacy we're talking about, what do you think? What are some words that we can describe?
The first thing I think about is the story of your life, kind of the story that will be told after you're gone. What you did, how you lived your life, what goals you accomplished.
Yep. And in legacy as well, it's not just all the great things you did, but it's the failures that happen as well. If it's going to be story, if it's going to be the narrative of who you are, and remember, it's not just the narrative of who you are as an individual, but if you're married, it's the story of us. It's the story of us, right? The way that our story goes. So when we think about legacy, what we're going to be hitting on the next few weeks is the good things about your marriage, the challenging things about your marriage, sacrifices that have to happen for your marriage to sort of reach its zenith, so to speak. Any other descriptions that you would give?
I like the idea that even talking about it like this, we can even plan out our legacy before it's even happened. It's kind of a pathway, that can lead our decisions and what we do, what we don't do in our lives, because we want to have a certain kind of story told after we're gone.
Yeah. So when it comes to us talking about marriage legacy and now sharing that with you, take the overview, take the big view on this word legacy, because here's what we're really saying. And every single one of us who are couples, who are married, we're going to go through this life, and our marriage is so much more than just this little thing that we've got going between us, right? You know that to be true. Your marriage is vastly impacts others, either for positive or for negative. If you have children, you know that to be true. But even if you don't have kids, you impact so many around you. And so for us to take a pause at this time and to really think about and to wonder and to contemplate and then be more deliberate and even authentic, there's a trendy word, about what do we want our marriage to be and what do we want our legacy to be as our marriage grows, and even, as we all know, as our marriage finishes in this life. What do we want it to be? What do we want to say about us? And who are we? So that's kind of legacy.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. But as we begin, there's a number of things we're going to talk about in the next 3 weeks. And we think they're really cool things. But we had to start with this one because in every marriage, there comes difficult times. In every marriage, there comes, this. In every marriage, there comes crisis.
We don't want it to come, but it does. It's called life.
And honestly, your legacy, our legacy, is nothing if we never go through anything like this. Okay, so it's true what Lisa says, right?
Yeah.
No one wants it.
Yeah.
Nobody desires it. Nobody prays for it. Nobody asks for it. Nobody begs for it. But it comes to everybody in every single way. And if you don't go through any crisis in your life, I guess the bigger question is, what substance is there? Is there any real substance in your marriage at all? And the answer would be probably not. So crisis, though we hate it, is a really important thing that we go through.
Some people are really good at going through crisis. So they might even look like they don't have crisis in their life, but they're just actually really good at it. I mean, there's crisis big and small.
It's true.
Right? How would you define crisis?
Well, yeah, crisis is very relative, isn't it? Because someone could be going through a crisis, and if I walk up to them and say, well, tell me what you're going through. Oh, well, that's nothing at all. I can't believe you call that a crisis. Listen, whatever someone's in, whatever somebody's going through, to them, if it's a crisis, it's a crisis. And it can be, we can all think and measure it big or small, but when you're in it, and you know this to be true, when you're in it, it's the real deal, baby. Like
there is big crises and smaller ones. I mean, right now we're all in a crisis. Right. The whole world. It's so strange that the whole world together is going through a crisis, and there's been so much change in all of your lives. There's been losses, for some even financial losses. And there's certainly been a loss of freedom and independence as we can't do the things that we want to do. So this has been a crisis for sure.
Yep. So here's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about your legacy in your life, your marriage legacy, your one with another and the legacy. And we're acknowledging that as you go through life, if you're married, every single marriage out there and every single one that is watching, even in the future, so to speak, is a marriage that is going to go through crisis. And can we pluralize it?
Yeah.
It's a marriage that's going to go through crises, right?
It's awkward to
I don't
say.
think anybody goes through one crisis in their marriage unless they're only married for a short time. But if you're married for a long time, you're going to go through a number of crises. And this is where we'd want to start. We want to take, for you guys, and we hope you will give us this liberty, we want to take a crisis that we've gone through and share how there are lessons for every crisis that we go through in this small little crisis that happened to us. Now, this crisis that we're going to tell you about, that Lisa and I went through, was a crisis that actually lasted a very small amount of time. It actually lasted probably 2 minutes in total.
It happened in our first year of marriage. Actually, in our first year of marriage, we had quite a bit of crisis.
Crises,
yes. We got married. We moved.
That wasn't a crisis, was it?
No, that was wonderful.
That was pretty good.
Best day. And we actually got married and moved across the country. And we were 23 and 24, and we moved with a group of people to start a church in a city on the West Coast.
You remember what that city's called?
Vancouver.
Okay, good. Just seeing if you're still the wife of my youth.
My brain's trying to remember, what am I going to share here? Anyway, in our first year of marriage, we moved like 6 times in our first year of marriage. So we had a lot of transition. Okay,
it was 6 times in our first year.
And actually, we moved from there, from Vancouver. We moved to another country, and
do you remember what that country was called? What are you? I'm
trying not to make the story go too long. Anyway, we moved to California,
which is in what country, Lisa?
The United States.
There you go.
And in that situation, we took over a church that had been in a lot of crisis, and we were supposed to, know how to fix everything. So
23 and 24.
Yeah. So anyway, but in the midst of all this, we had a crazy experience.
Yes.
And you go ahead and share that.
So we want to tell you about our crisis that only lasted a couple minutes, but all these years later, how many years now? All these years later?
Almost 30.
Almost 30 years later. Almost 30 years later. It's like it just happened yesterday. It was a very kind of traumatic crisis that happened to us. But we think, as we tell this story, that we're going to be able to weave that one crisis, and what happened in it happens through every single crisis that we all go through.
Yes.
So here we go. This is our crisis. As we were first married, and Lisa said we'd moved out to BC, we came actually back to Toronto to see some family just for a brief couple of days. And we were about to move from Vancouver to the outskirts of Los Angeles, a place called the Mojave Desert. And as we were about to do that, we realized that my family who lives in Northern Ontario will probably never see us, but would probably not see us for a number of years. And my grandfather, who is very dear to both Lisa and I, and really a father figure in my life, we knew that he was probably...
Well, it was our last.
It would be the last time that we would get to see him. So here in Toronto, we rented a car. Lisa and I rented a car from a rental place, and we drove up Highway 69 to Northern Ontario. And while that happened, we were driving north, and we were having a good time. Life was great. Everything was good. We were safe, driving the speed limit or thereabouts, I would say. And all of a sudden, on the highway, a vehicle pulled right in front of us and stopped entirely. Stopped completely dead. And so our crisis began. We slammed on the brakes. The car was skidding and making just an awful noise. I cranked the wheel, and because I was hoping that we could miss this stopped car, but unfortunately our car hit it in the back, and we careened off of the back of that car to the right towards the ditch, towards the shoulder.
Cliff.
And the ditch was more than a ditch. The ditch was actually a cliff. It was about a 15-foot cliff down. And as our car went off that cliff, the front right wheel was in the air because we kind of went off this angle, and the car basically nosed. We went down and it dug in, the front dug in, the back flipped over, and we landed on the roof. And then the car proceeded to roll down the cliff or fall down the cliff, and while it did, we rolled. How many times did we roll?
I don't know, 2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times, and all of this happened. So when we hit and the car went over to land on the roof, I yelled out, and by the way, when we were just about to hit, I also leaned across to quote unquote protect Lisa, like I'm gonna really do much in that kind of crisis. But I leaned over and I yelled, "Hang on!"
To which I yelled back, "I'm okay."
And then that was one roll. Are we still there?
Yeah.
On the second roll, I yelled, what did I yell? I yelled, "Hang on."
I said, "I'm okay."
Yes. And the next roll, I said, "Are you all right?"
All I remember, like in slow motion, just saying, "We're gonna be all right."
And then
It's crazy.
it was all over, and the car landed on its roof.
Oh, can I just say, I didn't think we were going to be all right. I was waiting for a big sheet of metal to come through
It's
and
true.
and
It's
end
true.
it all, is what I really was thinking.
It's true. While we were talking in the midst of all of these rolls, both of us, we didn't say it. And you don't
No.
really have time to say anything,
Yeah.
right? I was just like, hang on. Like, all this happened so fast. But later we talked about it, and she was saying,
yeah.
we're going to be all
It
right.
was-
But she had fully convinced we were going to die.
Yeah,
And I
any
was,
second something was going to, lights out was what I was expecting.
yeah, and I was expecting the roof to crush down. And I just remember thinking, wow, we just got married and life is over. Isn't that too? Like, literally is what we were thinking.
It was sad.
And it really was slow motion in a lot of ways. And so we just kind of, so by the way, we landed on the roof. We were down this cliff, down way off the road, down in this gully, this cliff. The car was upside down. The wheels were spinning. All the glass, every window in the car was smashed out. The luggage that we had in the back of the trunk flew open, of course, when we went end over end. And our luggage, we had 4 bags. There was one bag thrown about 30 yards in front of the car. There was one bag thrown 30 yards behind. There was one bag up on the road. And
Wear your seatbelts, people. That's the only.
And there was one bag in the bush.
With the
Okay,
seatbelts.
let's get to the seatbelts in a second. But the
Okay.
bags went literally north,
Yeah,
south,
yeah.
east, and west. We were wearing our seatbelts. And as the car came to a stop, we were both hanging in our seats. Of course, the car was on its roof, so
Yeah.
picture us upside down. And our arms were on the roof, and there was glass everywhere. And we sort of looked at each other, and I'll never forget what Lisa said. She said it one more time, "We're going to be all right." And then we undid our seatbelts, and we both fell to the roof, and we crawled out. And I'm just about
That
done
was a
with the
good
story.
moment. That was a good
It was
moment.
a great
Yeah.
moment, but a lot of terrible things in those few seconds. Amazing things happened. Like the driver's side window smashed because my head smashed it. I remember that happening, and I've lost sight to this day on this side of my head. On this side of my head, on this
Your
eye,
peripheral.
I have eye damage. And we were bleeding a little bit. We crawled out of the car. We were alive. We saw each other. This was our crisis. Now, interestingly, the people who stopped up on the road, remember up on the road? People who stopped up on the road to make sure that the other car was okay, they kind of came to the edge of the cliff and they looked over, fully expecting us to be dead. And they didn't even come down to help us.
A few cars stopped and people all lined up to just.
Yeah. They didn't even come down to help us. They were just
Yeah.
they were more shocked that we were alive and walking around than anybody else. So here's what we want to say about that story. When we talk about crisis, that's one of ours, happened in 2 minutes. Very impactful in our life. And we think that every single crisis, this is going to be our little thesis here, every single crisis that happens in our life, we can learn from a car wreck. whatever crisis you're going to go through, and that was a car accident, right?
Yeah.
There's so many crises that happen in our life, right? There can be our finances are in big trouble. I've lost a job. There's a lump on the breast. There's, like, you can just kind of go on and on. Every life, every marriage, every group of people have a crisis. But we're saying that there can be lessons from the car wreck that we were in that apply to every crisis that you and I go through, that we go through. So,
we have a great analogy.
Okay.
That we're going to base this whole lesson off of lessons from a car wreck.
From a car wreck.
Yes.
So here's what we're going to try to do. Remember some of the things we say. So when you're in your crisis, and maybe you're in it right now, or when you go through your crisis, and we'll talk about that in just a second, just remember lessons from a car wreck, right? We're trying to make this poetic. We were talking about this week. Wouldn't it be great if we came up with something like stop, drop, and roll?
Yes,
right?
because that helps, right?
Everybody knows,
it helps
stop, drop,
when
and roll.
you prepare before the crisis comes.
Well, we got some kids watching here, kids who are married, but they don't even know. Have you ever heard of stop, drop, and what is going on? What
I have
crisis
used
is
that,
What
yes.
crisis is going on?
You're
when
on
you say,
fire.
If you ever catch on fire,
You're on-
stop, drop, and roll.
Yes.
Babe, I'm on fire.
I know.
But not that kind of on fire. Literally on fire, you
yes.
stop, drop, and roll. So we're here trying to come up with something with crisis. And here's what we came up with. It's not as easy to remember. Stop,
it's not
drop,
as
and
easy
roll.
to remember, but it's still going to be memorable.
Here it is. Okay. Every crisis has this moment before the hit. Remember, this is lessons from a car wreck.
Yes.
Before the hit. Life before the hit. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to?
Well, I think obviously that this is before the crisis comes, and we just want to suggest that it's a great opportunity to be readying yourself for when a crisis does come, but also just to enjoy the positive time of life you're in. Be positive. Don't make small things into a crisis, because that's foolish, because when a real crisis comes, you'll know the difference. But
Right.
I think we can sometimes, make little things into a crisis when they're not.
Yeah.
So enjoy this stage of life
If you're a couple
in.
that makes little things into a crisis, you're really going to know that when a real crisis happens, that we were just kind of dumb and foolish and petty and maybe wore our feelings on our sleeve.
I know just recently I had a small, not a crisis, but just, expectations that I had were totally crushed. And it's amazing how, like, the temptation to be a child in those moments, for me anyway, and I have to talk myself out of it, and not get upset with you or whatever. And so I think you can build a resiliency to your childishness and to be able to recognize, that life is full of inconveniences, and those are not the things you want to sweat. In fact, you should be positive and enjoy, that you're in a stage of life that's pretty nice, and you're doing well.
Yeah, so the first point, what's the so what of the first point? Before the hit, before the crisis, and if that's where you are tonight, and that was us. We were driving up before the hit, we were driving on the road, life was good, we were talking to each other, we were enjoying life, there was nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And sometimes in our life, hopefully many times in our life, that's the way
Yeah,
life is.
nothing
So
wrong,
enjoy yourself before the hit. If you've never had a hit or had a crisis in your life, good for you, God bless you. Something's coming though. So enjoy this time and don't be foolish and make a crisis out of something
Don't
that's
brace
really...
yourself for the crisis. Be positive. Enjoy this time in your life.
Okay, so that's our first thing that we thought of as we thought about lessons from a car wreck. Enjoy the drive. Don't be so ready that the world is going to collapse. The zombies will come out. There will be an apocalypse. Don't live that way. When there's no crisis, man, enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
But then eventually, you hit something. A crisis happens. In our case, someone pulled onto the highway and stopped right in front of us. We hit that car, and our crisis began. And the next, and part of our crisis, which is up on the screen here, is during the roll. So the first thing is before the hit.
It's happening.
The next part of the crisis is during the roll. So the car is in the air, it's flipping around, heads are smashing windows, windows are blowing out, luggage is flying.
I think it's pretty amazing that you can communicate during the roll. I think that's amazing. And actually, we will treasure till our grave each separately or if we're married together. Anyway, I will treasure those words that we shared during the roll. I think that's so profound that we were reassuring each other in the middle of a car accident.
And we had every confidence that we were not going to live, but we were talking to each other and trying to reassure. Because like at that moment, and we mean this sincerely, at the moment of our crisis there, as we were flying around, and it was insane. Like I was all over the car. My seatbelt was holding me in, but I was literally at one point, my head was out of the car because I went through the windshield, and the car was rolling, and that means my head could have been crushed, and she was all over the place too. But in that
Can
moment,
I just say, note to self, when you're in a car accident, stay really back against the seat, because that's where the seatbelt.
Yeah,
because you
don't
went
do
like that,
this, right?
it
Yeah,
stretched
it's
out
true.
the seatbelt.
It's very true.
It's good to know.
But our heart's desire was, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I hope she does. And her heart's desire is, I don't think I'm going to make it. I hope he does. And so here's the lesson that we want to share with you. This is the stop, drop, and roll part of it. This is before the hit. Hey, enjoy your life. During the roll, stay talking to each other.
Yeah.
Whatever your crisis is, look, we know this silly little car accident is not what happens to everybody, but we're just using it as an analogy.
Like a metaphor,
when
yeah.
you get in your crisis and you're flying, or like we're talking, especially the amygdala is fired up. There is just all that cortisone.
Adrenaline.
You've just been hit and you're in the air. Your crisis hit you.
Yeah.
You don't know which way is up.
Yeah.
You don't know which way is down. It's so important at that moment, during the roll, keep talking to each other. That is so huge because we see in married couples all the time when crisis hit, what they do is they pull back from talking to each other.
Well, even during this crisis, I've been talking to people and hearing that each week has kind of a new reality with what we're going through with with the world and the virus, and just we're getting tired and even tired of what was exciting at the start of it. Getting to spend all this time together. Now maybe it's not as exciting. It's just so important to stay connected and to choose to be together. That's why we were asking about things that you're doing together, and it's a good time to really make sure you really do have a lot of check-ins with each other. And
right.
See that.
Did you hear that word, check-ins? Like you no, that's such a great word, right? Check in with each other during your crisis. That first stage of the crisis, when there is no footing anymore, when your world is exploding around you, right? We're using the car analogy, but we understand that you're not going through a car wreck right now, but you're going through something. Yeah. If your marriage is going to have legacy, if your story is going to be one that's going to impact others, if your story is going to be a noble one, it's at times like this that you make that important decision during the roll to stay with each other. We said this a few weeks ago. We kind of coined this. It resonates with us. But in our marriage, during the wreck, during the crisis, especially during that first roll or the first few rolls, to say this or to get this mantra in our heart, it's us against the world. It's us against the world. Now, I know some of you you're faith people, and you know that I'm your minister, I'm an elder, Lisa's an elder's wife. Boy, they shouldn't be saying it's us against the world. Don't you know we've got to be... Absolutely. All that stuff that you've heard me preach, that you believe as a faith person, absolutely. But there are times, don't get mad at us now, but there are times in our marriage.
Yeah, you got to cling to each other.
It's just us. While we were flying through the air, as much as you may have loved us at that time in history, you were absolutely no good to us. We were just all alone going through our role, right? And so and we couldn't even talk that much. It wasn't elegant speech, but how about that? At the time of our crisis, we weren't able to speak very much. We weren't able to speak eloquently. We weren't able to speak words of love, Shakespearean sonnets. That's not what happened. Yet these are the words that are so precious to us. Do you remember that time when I was flying around, when I went half blind in one eye, when I smashed out a window, and you said, "We're gonna be all right." It's what I cherish going forward from a crisis in our legacy for our marriage.
Yeah.
Shall we go on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. I don't know if you can see this, but remember, it's lessons from a car crash. There's before the hit, there's during the roll, and then there's upside down. Remember we told you the story? after it all stopped, the crisis wasn't over, but we were upside down, hanging upside down. The radio was still playing. I remember that. And the seatbelts were holding us in. And there we hung. Lisa's hair.
I just couldn't believe
Lisa's
we
hair
were
was hanging
alive.
upside
I could
down.
not believe we were alive. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so the next thing was just kind of worrying, like you see movies, cars blowing up, and that was my next thought was like, let's get out of here.
We've seen too many movies.
So we
the
got
car's gonna blow.
get out of this seatbelt and get out of this. So we had to get out.
So what's the lesson in a crisis that not everybody's in a car wreck, but what's the upside down lesson for us here?
I think the upside down lesson is just kind of figuring out like what just happened and assess the situation.
Assess the situation.
And it was tempting to it can be tempting to blame each other when in that instance, I think I was reading something and you got distracted and looked at me and whatever, and you have a thing with white cars and the car was white and you couldn't see it, and so
I have a thing with white cars.
Not being able to see them.
I have a thing with being half blind.
Anyway, you when you're upside down and your life is crazy and you're just like, what is happening? You don't want to blame each other.
Right. Let's not move too fast here. Let's go back to the first thing that you said. You got to assess your situation. Anytime you're in a crisis, and the time to assess is not when you're rolling, right? That's you literally cannot assess your life when you're rolling, when you're in the air, when you're upside down, when windows are blowing out. So that might be some diagnosis, some prognosis, that might be a loss of job. When you're in the middle of that just crazy roll, you can't assess. But at some point, the crisis is still full bore, but things stop for a bit. And that's where you take stock. You've got to assess the situation. You've got to sort of look what's happening here. And in our case, it was, okay, let's extricate ourselves from this situation. Let's get out. That's not to say there weren't problems. There was blood. There was,
Yeah, we had to kind of get away and figure out how bad is the situation.
Of course, we were in shock. We had to literally even just go, what is going on? Like, we literally had to kind of do that assessment. And we just want to put before you that in every crisis, in every marriage, when the rocking and the flying and the glass stops, and you've been in communication, even when things are flying, right?
Yeah.
It's not been pretty, but the communication stayed. Then when it stops, you're able to start to assess and evaluate the situation. The second point that Lisa made is really super important. When you do the assessment in the midst of your crisis, that is not the time to start saying whose fault it was. Because let me tell you whose fault it was in our story. Everybody shares the fault. Now, I wrecked the car, so it's mostly my fault. The person pulled a 2-ton vehicle in front of us and stopped it dead. It's their fault. And by the way, by the time we dragged ourselves up the cliff again, the ambulance was there and took that person away. They were actually fine, but just to be for precautions, took that person away. They never even offered us an ambulance ride because they thought we were dead. They didn't even want to talk to us. Like, the people were just kind of like, are you? Anyways, but the time is not to blame. I could blame that person in front of us. I could blame myself. I could blame Lisa because she showed me a nice card and that distracted me. Maybe it was her fault. You know what's really unimportant during a crisis? Whose fault it is. Really.
But it's very tempting to get angry. I think after the commotion of the initial shock of whatever it is that you're going through, whatever bad news you've heard, or there's the sort of after the shock, there's also the anger of the situation, the loss of control, and wanting to blame somebody or wanting to blame yourself, and it's so hard to make a plan and really do things well when that's the emotional roller coaster that you're on.
Yeah, it's very good. A lot of crises come into our lives that way. Admittedly, there are some crises that come into our life that are solely one person's responsibility. And that's not totally what we're talking about tonight. For example, like infidelity or something like that. We're not trying to cause any hurt for anybody watching there. Those kind of crises are much more significant and need that professional kind of help. But what we're referencing is sort of the life crises that come that you don't see happening, and it's there. You got to watch. You got to stay in that conversation with each other, and then you got to really watch the blame.
And even when it is more responsibility on one person over the other, it's a marriage, so it's both of your responsibility.
Because why? Because we're
together.
right. It's us.
Yes, against the world.
It's us against the world.
Yeah.
Now, as we crawled our way back up this cliff and stood on the road, and people kind of backed away from us, there was blame. And a police officer walked over to me, and I'm not kidding, literally walked over to me, and he tore off a ticket, a careless driving ticket, and he said, "I'm really sorry." And I said, "There was nothing I could do." He said, "I know. It's not your fault, but the law says you're a careless driver." And he handed me a ticket, patted me on the shoulder, and he walked away. There's lots of blame to go around in a crisis. We don't need to heap it on each other at those moments. So, lessons from a car wreck.
Okay.
Anything else you want to say about upside down?
I think that's good.
So, before the hit, enjoy your life. When you get hit and life's upside down, or not upside down, but life's flying around during the roll, keep talking to each other. And when you get upside down, assess the situation. Let's keep going. This is the aftermath.
Okay, and there in this situation, there was an aftermath. There's a lot of cleaning up to do.
The aftermath is cleaning up the crisis, so to speak. In our case, it was cleaning up, finding all our luggage, stuff like that. We won't bore you with that anymore. But talk a little bit about lessons from a car wreck in our crisis that happens to us every single day. What's the aftermath? Well,
I think again, we thought such a great analogy, but really after it was all done, we needed help. I mean, we didn't have a vehicle to drive. We had,
and
we were in the middle of, we were in the middle of nowhere, and it's when we were down where the car was picking up, we had like underwear, everything, all your personal stuff is out in the open, and there was a line of people up on the road just staring at us, like just spectating, watching us, which was very strange. I remember thinking, do they think we're ghosts? Like, do they think we're...
Did you really think that?
I thought...
I actually thought that. We've never talked about this.
I thought they thought we were dead people.
I literally thought...
and that we were ghosts.
People. Like, maybe we're not here.
It was the strangest thing because they absolutely would not engage with us. So everyone was in shock, I guess.
Yep.
So you need to get help.
Back to our underwear.
Okay, but away from the car accident, in life, when you have a crisis, we all need help.
Yes.
We definitely need help. And what Kevin and I were talking about when we were kind of listening through some of the crises in our lives, we were just talking about how important it is to find the safe people that you can really go to in those moments to go through that with. And I think sometimes the first few crises, you realize you have no one. Like in that situation, the people that, sometimes the people you think will be there for you are not there for you. And that's just the sad reality that you find out only when you're going through a crisis. But the goal is to find people, and we have found some people in our journey, and don't let go of those people once you find them, because they are lifesavers.
Well, they're everything you need. It's absolutely true.
And sometimes when you find them, you even have to train each other how to be there for each other,
That's true.
And
sometimes you have to tell people, look, here's what I need when I'm in my crisis. Here's what, it's very interesting. When we were in our car wreck, and there we were all alone, sitting on the side of the road. We gathered up our things. The car was just there, and ambulance leaves, not with us in it. Policeman gives ticket. Like, life is bad. And we managed to get a phone call to Lisa's grandparents, who lived about 45 minutes away. And there we sat, and slowly down the road, this car appeared. And all of a sudden, we had friends. We had the help we needed. And it's there that everything, when you get those people that you need, it's where the shock, you're allowed to have the shock set in. You can't do anything before that happens.
Until that moment, we had to be strong for each other. But then, when you get those special people in your lives, then you can stop worrying about the other and actually, get what you need.
Yeah.
So that's so important.
We're suggesting during the aftermath, you've done your assessment, you get everything sort of picked up and get where you need to be. Your next step is there's got to be people who who can help you through this.
Yeah.
Now that seems to be such a cliche thing, but we're really, 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 really talking about the right people. Not just anybody. Not just somebody who's going to come to you and just give you, the cliche statements, but somebody who's sort of been proven. And as Lisa said, unfortunately, sometimes we go through a crisis or two, and we don't, and some of the people around us prove that they're not people to be in crisis with us.
And during this, it's true. And during this aftermath stage, that often is said, don't make any big decisions, which I think other people can help you with that as well. You know, we can do some rash things after we've been through, you know, sort of the post-traumatic stress sets in, and you can make some silly decisions. And those good friends can help you not go down the wrong road.
Yes.
You want to go down the right roads, and so that's so important.
All right, so lessons from a car wreck. Before your wreck happens, before your crisis happens, before the hit, enjoy your life. But when the hit happens and you're flying around during the roll, keep talking to each other. While you're upside down, get out from the wreckage as best you can, make some assessments and figure things out. And then during the aftermath, you're looking for some key people, some real friends who can help you journey through your crisis. And let's bring it now all full circle. Hey, can you see what we did here? It's really a circle. And what does that mean? Crisis happen, and then crisis go away, and then crisis happen again, and crisis go away. So after you pull yourself up on the road of life, after you walk away from the wreckage of your last crisis, after you get yourself in the hands, the capable hands of someone who's a proven friend who can guide you through, it's time again, and we think this is really key, but it's time again to return to positivity. It's time again to return to positivity. In other words, this is what we see in many people, and let's be honest, it happens in our life. I have a tendency for this more than Lisa. Lisa's a much more optimistic person than I am by nature. I have a tendency, once I go through a crisis, I'll keep that feeling, that enduring, nagging, ugly, catastrophe feeling, I'll keep that going for years. If I don't have Lisa, and frankly, if I don't have my faith in God to say, snap out of this. The crisis is now over. Your life may be dramatically different as a result of the crisis. Remember, I've lost vision, right? I've received a careless driving ticket. I mean, that's not as bad as losing vision. So after your crisis is over, life doesn't necessarily be the same. Like we're talking about some major things going on in everybody's lives. There may be surgeries that happen. There may be some real significant health issues or financial issues, some crisis in that way.
Some crises go on and on too,
On and
not
on,
much longer than
in a lot of ways, that horrifying part of the crisis, it ends, and it's time for you now as a couple to return to positivity. Why? Well, for your own health, but also for your marriage legacy.
Yeah.
In other words, you can't be a person, and we can't become people who are just catastrophizing. And that's actually a word, catastrophizing.
Is it really?
It really is.
I thought you made it up.
No, of course not. Google it. It's a word. No, you don't have to. But in other words, you're just always anticipating that next crisis, that next catastrophe from happening, and it's time you've got to snap out of it. And I know we're talking to people who've all gone through crisis. You know what I'm talking about here. There's been those moments where you only have each other, where the other has carried the other. Those unbelievable, powerful moments where only prayer has gotten you through, or hanging on to each other, and those unfiltered words of, we're going to be all right, okay, that's it. You've made it, you've gotten through it. Now it's time for you to return back to positivity and not thinking all is lost in the future coming.
And one of the things that we love to do in this stage is to go over the lessons learned. There's amazing, valuable lessons that you can learn through a catastrophe, through a crisis.
And a catastrophe.
And a catastrophe, yes.
Same thing.
You know, and there's a tolerance level that grows, tolerance for pain. I've said after a few, you know, there's been times in our lives it's taken me a few years, even in all my positivity, to get over certain
Well, I think
things.
this is an important point, if I can just
Yep.
interrupt you, and then I want you to keep going.
Yeah.
But we're using a 2-minute crisis in our life, acknowledging that there's a lot of crises.
I really hope everyone gets the whole analogy and doesn't
Yeah.
think we're trivializing crisis.
There's some crises
This
that
is-
last for years, and
this-
we've gone through them. We just
Yeah.
didn't want to bore
Yeah,
you
no,
with
this we
those.
just thought was a creative way to kind
Yeah.
of wrap it all up in a package.
So
But
can you keep going? 'Cause
Yeah,
you're-
so with
I love the point you're about to make.
with some of the most devastating, like just gutting me to my bottom of my soul pain, when I finally did get through it and get to the other side of it, I could not help but realize, wow, I like the new me better than the old me. Like, it's amazing how much compassion grows in your heart when
Isn't that awesome?
for other people when you've been through pain, and people just they know it in each other's eyes when they've shared real pain. And again,
Yeah.
we don't wish pain on ourselves or anyone else so that you can get that. But it's just there's something.
But we do.
No,
But we don't.
I mean, we don't. But there's just
It's just gonna happen.
something beautiful that happens to people
Yeah.
who successfully make it through crisis.
And I like the you that has come through the crisis too.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a great phrase. After I went through my crisis, I like the me that was on the other side of
Yeah.
it. If you can
Amazing.
get that way,
It's
if you can get to that kind of positivity, this is where the growth happens. This is where the marriage legacy happens. There's a sort of a tension for people with faith. There's this weird tension, and I've struggled through it over the years. It's this thinking of, well, what we're in is sort of worth it. Maybe can I say this? And it kind of goes. There are some scriptures that sort of talk like this, but I really love what Lisa says here. And we're using our 2-minute crisis, but we've been through so many crises. That's why it's a circle here. Once you get done, then start enjoying yourself again. But guess what's coming? A hit's coming soon. You're like, oh, Kevin, please. I don't know what to tell you. A hit's coming again, and you're going to be in the air again, and then you're going to be upside down again, and then there's going to be the aftermath again. Get those friends, talk to each other through it, and then return back to positivity again. Oh, we got to do this again? Yeah, and you got to wake up every day. Like, that's the cycle of life, right? But there can be this great legacy in your marriage by the way you handle crisis. And a lot of times we say to each other, well, what's meant to be is what's meant to be. And I don't like that tension. There's even some scriptures that there's this scripture. It's a beautiful scripture, but it has a weird tension in it, right? Do you know this scripture? This is from Romans 8 in chapter 28. If you don't know it, if you've never even read this before, read this with me. I'm going to look at the screen here and read it to you. And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them. Great scripture. Sometimes it's not a great scripture. Sometimes it's like, are you kidding? This just happened to me? This crisis happened to me? Are you telling me that God, the divine, brought this on? Well, I got a problem with that. And it's okay for us to have those kind of problems. And sometimes people come by our side with sort of cliche statements and they say, oh, what's happening? It's all worth it. The coronavirus, it's all worth it. That car wreck was all worth it. Your dad dying was all worth it. My father dying, your father, it was all worth it. Made you a better person. Sometimes those kind of statements aren't helpful at all, are they?
No.
Sometimes we're in the midst of a crisis like the coronavirus, and when someone says to me, it's worth it, I go, I don't know if it was worth it or not. But what it can be for us is it doesn't have to be worth less. You see the difference? The crises that we've gone through in our life, if you said to me, oh, they were all worth it, Kevin, I would say, you don't know. Like Lisa used the word gutting, right? And I know it's resonating with some of us. There's things that have happened that I don't ever want to go back to. And you're going to say to me, oh, it was worth it? Don't talk to me like that. But in this marriage, what we say to each other through it is it needs to be not worthless. What we went through, don't make it worthless now. Go that full circle. I don't have the circle up there, but you go that full circle, you get back to that place of positivity.
Yeah. It's so beautiful to grow together, to learn these lessons together, to talk about them with each other, and make this part of your legacy, part of what you want the story to be told. When it's told about you, this will be a part of it, your failures and your successes, but really how you made it through your failures, successfully. So those are really the much more enriching, stories even than the goals achieved, but more how we really rose above the situations, of the obstacles, the hard times, and made it through with a smile on our face, and still be able to joke and laugh, and still be positive about the days to come ahead of us.
Yep.
Not have the sky is falling attitude all the time, and just to some sort of self-preservation wants us to sometimes do that. Well, I'm just not going to enjoy life if I don't know what's coming around the corner. So it's important not to have that pessimistic, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't know where that expression came from, but waiting.
The other shoe to drop?
Yeah. Where did that come from?
Somebody's Googling it right now.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm sure we'll find out next week. Or drop that in the chat. We've got a couple minutes left here. You can drop it in the chat where the saying, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But that is really no way to live. I mean, we need to be prepared, but that's no way to live. But also, it's another way not to live is just thinking that no crisis will ever come. There is... a speaker that is really kind of polarizing. This man is somewhat politically polarizing, and I don't even want to get into any debate about this, but his name's Jordan Peterson, and he said this one really great phrase that resonated with me, and I think about our marriages, and I would say it to you, and he just says simply, he's got sort of a talk about this, he just says, you've got to choose your sacrifice. In life, you got to choose your sacrifice. Have no illusions. You will sacrifice.
There will be sacrifice.
You might as well just choose it,
Yeah.
and make your way through it.
I think that needs to
it.
be a whole other conversation, because
It is.
you probably
I
just
guess it
raised
is.
more questions than you answered.
Yeah, but really, kind of what we're talking about here is in every marriage that has any value and any substance, in any marriage that's going to have a legacy of value and a legacy that you want and a legacy that you're going to be proud of, you're going to need to go through crisis, and you're probably going to need, not probably, you're going to go through crisis many times over and over again. If you're a young married and you're thinking, I don't think we've gone through a crisis, party tonight. Go, just party.
And
Have
you
a great
probably
time.
have, because I don't think we thought in our first year of marriage, we didn't think there was anything
Yeah,
abnormal
but let
about.
me have my point here. There's some
Okay,
out here
sorry.
that they've never gone through crisis. Party tonight, start kissing now, keep necking for the rest of the night, have sexual intimacy, go for it. You're having the time of your life right now.
Yeah, honeymoon.
Then there's others of us where we've been, and maybe you've only been through one crisis, 2, 3, 4, and you get our age and the age of some of the people here. You don't even know how many you've had. And what we should say to you tonight is start kissing, start necking, and have sexual intimacy tonight, because you got to stay positive. Just keep it going, right? And life is the big
Good advice,
circle.
Kevin.
Do you like that?
Good advice.
All right, so I think we've pretty well
Maybe you should
wrapped
take your
it.
own advice.
Well, I will. Thank you very much. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of another Marriage Monday. And of course, we started talking about marriage legacy.
Yes, come back and hear more.
We're going to talk about
the
legacy next week as well. We're not going to talk
Yeah.
about crisis, but we're going to talk about more ways
Yeah.
that you can have a great marriage legacy
Yeah.
as well. Lisa, it's been fun.
It has.
Do you think we helped them?
I hope so.
We have no idea. And by this point in the evening, we don't even care anymore. Come back to us
I do care.
next Monday for Marriage what?
Monday.
Marriage Monday here on the YouTube
Thanks,
channel.
everybody. Thank you so much.
We'll see you guys next week. Good night.